Today on Fake and Twisted News, Christians are being persecuted yet again in the United States. This time, the victim is Samantha Fulnecky, an Oklahoma University student who received a 0 for her essay about her Christian beliefs. The professor, to no one's surprise, is a transgender, as this event clearly shows the transgenders are just spewing hate towards Christians. This is a direct violation of Samantha's First Amendment rights, and it's a perfect example of why that evil that is transgenders needs to be stopped. I mean, at least that's the story that Turning Point USA, the organization that the late Charlie Kirk founded, wants you to believe. In reality, that narrative is extremely exaggerated and twisted, turning something that is just a simple grading dispute, which shouldn't even be a dispute to begin with, but we'll get into that, into a whole big Christian persecution narrative, while at the same time actively persecuting the LGBTQ community. Let's talk about it. Welcome to another episode of the Common Sense Cult, where we unravel Christian thinking, dissect apologetics, and criticize indoctrination. Today we're going to be talking about the now viral essay that was turned in at the Oklahoma University, and the student received a 0, and the essay is filled with Christian beliefs. So when I first heard about this, I thought that either this is honestly a direct violation of her First Amendment rights, her freedom of religion, etc., or it's being completely misinterpreted and blown out of proportion. And I kind of leaned into the latter because the organization that is now backing the student is Turning Point USA. And that's the organization that Charlie Kirk founded. And as I mentioned in my other video, they have turned him into a whole martyr, which he is not. And I had a feeling that they were trying to turn this into a whole nother Christian persecution story, and I was right. We're going to look at her essay, and I have a background in education and editing, so I have the essay right here. I have redlined it. I have edited it and looked at the requirements to see if she actually deserved the grade that she got. So we're going to go through those points, look at her essay, and then talk about how this narrative is yet again a false narrative about supposed Christian persecution in the United States. All right, so when I first looked at this article, I had no idea what year the student, Samantha Fulnecky, was in. I did not know her major. I had just heard a lot of rumors about it, specifically from Turning Point USA, and I wanted to go in with a blank slate, read the article, look at the assignment, and see what I thought. So I'm not going to talk about what year or what major she's in.
The suspense is killing me.
I want you to think about that. Listen to her article and think what year you would put her in and what major she might be studying, what class this might be for, because what I assumed from reading this is not at all the fact. So we're first going to look at the actual assignment. It says, you must write a 650-word double-spaced reaction paper demonstrating that you read the assigned article and includes a thoughtful reaction to the material presented in the article. Please remember that your reaction paper should not be a summary, but rather a thoughtful discussion of some aspect of the article. Possible approaches to reaction papers include 1. A discussion of why you feel the topic is important and worthy of study or not. 2. An application of the study or results to your own experiences. There are other possibilities as well. The best reaction papers illustrate that students have read the assigned materials and engaged in critical thinking about some aspect of the article. So the article that they had to read and react to, I could not get full access to it because I do not have a university email or access. However, I did find the abstract of the article that I think that they had to read based on the rubric and the title of the article that was listed there. I believe it is Relations Among Gender Typicality, Peer Relations, and Mental Health During Early Adolescence by Jennifer A. Jewell, Christia Spears Brown. And we're going to look at the abstract. briefly just to give you an idea of what the article was about and what Samantha was supposedly reacting to in her essay. It says, the current study examines whether being high in gender typicality is associated with popularity, whether being low in gender typicality is associated with rejection, teasing, and whether teasing due to low gender typicality mediates the association with negative mental health. Middle school children, 34 boys and 50 girls, described hypothetical popular and rejected teased peers, and completed self-report measures about their own gender typicality, experiences with gender-based teasing, depressive symptoms, anxiety, self-esteem, and body image. Participants also completed measures about their peers' gender typicality, popularity, and likability. Results indicated that popular youth were described as more gender typical than rejected teased youth. Further, being typical for one's gender significantly predicted being rated as popular by peers, and this relationship was moderated by gender. Finally, low gender typicality predicted more negative mental health outcomes for boys. These relationships were, at times, mediated by experiences with gender-based teasing, suggesting that negative mental health outcomes may be a result of the social repercussions of being low in gender typicality rather than a direct result of low typicality. Essentially, what this article is exploring, and it did an experiment about, is how mental health and popularity connect with gender typicality. So essentially, when they have a physical appearance that looks more gender normative, are they more popular? Do they experience more or less teasing? And what the study found is that those who were more popular did tend to fit into the gender stereotypes for society. And again, I think this is a really interesting topic because gender norms, what are gender norms? Like, for example, boys should have short hair and girls should have long hair. That is stereotypical. Girls should be starting to have curves. That would be a gender norm in early adolescence. And those who are not starting to have curves would probably experience more teasing. That can have an effect on popularity and how they are perceived by their peers. Other things like what type of clothes they wear, what style they're into.
You're wearing sweatpants. It's Monday.
So?
So that's against the rule, and you can't sit with us.
If the boys' voices haven't lowered yet and they sound more like girls usually do, are they teased more? Are they less popular?
You sound like a little girl.
All of these things as kids are changing, it's very complex, and I would love to read the full thing to see what type of data it offers. But it's a very interesting topic. It opens up the door to a lot of different types of discussions and how people like teachers and parents can help kids through that process. So see how I just off the cuff came up with different ideas of how to interact with this article and how to discuss it. I could even draw on my own experience with my kids. For example, my son and also my husband both have long hair and they're men. Do they get teased for it? Absolutely. And I can see how that can relate to popularity and mental health, especially in adolescence. So I could, as a student, pull on that experience and fit it into an essay and react to this article. Or I could pull from my own experiences as a teen and how, while I did fit some of the gender stereotypes, I was never really popular. So I could offer an alternative option to what is presented in the article and say, well, gender norms may be related to popularity. It isn't always the case, and here are some other things that we need to take into consideration in terms of mental health. So there are so many ways that you could come at this article and react to it. Did Samantha Fulnecky do any of those? No, absolutely not. She wrote something that I don't think it can even be called a theological piece. It's not even exactly correct. It contradicts itself, and it completely ignores the article at hand. So here's the grading rubric. Number 1, does the paper show a clear tie-in to the assigned article? 10 points. No, not at all. There is not one citation to the article. Not one. It does not name the article. It does not name the authors. It does not cite any data. It does not cite the experiment, how they interacted with the kids, how they interviewed them, what they used as their parameters. None of that. None of that was explored in this essay from Samantha. And we're actually going to look at a few of the places where she mentions the article. It starts out with this article. First of all, this is really annoying to me as an editor because this article. You're starting a whole ass essay with this article. There's nothing before this, nothing at all before this. It's just this article. What article? What article are we talking about? This is the introduction to your paper. There's nothing before it. There's no precedent.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Even if the assignment is to use a specific article, you should assume that your reader doesn't know about that. I mean, are these students not using the whole like inverted triangle to create your introduction paragraph where you start really broadly and pull your readers in and finish with your thesis statement? I'm pretty sure that kids are still taught that and expected to do that in high school and college. That's your standard academic intro paragraph.
And yep, found the Oklahoma State Standard. Samantha would have learned this in 9th grade. Write argumentative essays that include a defensible thesis.
But this is what she wrote. She wrote this article. What article? I don't fucking know. This article was very thought-provoking, and thought-provoking is spelled incorrectly, and caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. I mean, it's redundant. There's a spelling issue right off the bat. But that's it. That's what she said about this article. So what is the article about? I have no idea. This could be referring to quite literally any article that has talked about gender, and there are hundreds, probably thousands of articles that talk about gender. So I have no idea what article this is referring to. We have another place where she mentions the article, and it's the first sentence in the second paragraph, which says, "It is frustrating to me when I read articles like this and discussion posts from my classmates of so many people trying to conform to the same mundane opinion so they do not step on people's toes." A confusing sentence, but it still doesn't specify anything from the article. I still don't know what article we're talking about or what she's referring to in the article. No idea whatsoever. And here we have another use of the word article, and this one is slightly better from the rest. It says, "I strongly disagree with the idea from the article that encouraging acceptance of diverse gender expressions could improve students' confidence." And while this sentence does engage more with at least something more tangible from the article, it does so in a way that is not very thoughtful or well written. I mean, it says the idea from the article, and I'm not sure what this idea is because based on the abstract, and it's a peer-reviewed article, right? It's based on evidence, not an idea. An idea is what inspired the experiment and the interviews and everything. This isn't an idea. The article isn't sharing an idea, which is what I said at the beginning. The article was talking about evidence. The people had an idea, well, maybe there's a correlation between mental health and gender norms and popularity. Let's go find out if the data and the evidence supports that idea. So the idea is what spurred them on to find the information, and then they're sharing their data. None of this is an idea, it's data, and I wanted to see that data mentioned by Samantha in her essay, and that's just not there. So while this kind of sort of connects to the article more, it's a really, really poor attempt, and there should have been citations, quotations. If you disagree with what the article discusses, explain how, bring in data from somewhere else, talk about it, but no.
Why would I do that?
And the last mention we have of article is in the conclusion where she says, "Overall, reading articles such as this one encourage me to one day raise my children knowing that they have a heavenly Father who loves them and cherishes them deeply, and that having their identity firmly rooted in who he is will give them the satisfaction and acceptance that the world can never provide for them." Holy run-on sentence. Yeah, that is a mess of a sentence. Reading articles such as this one, I still don't know what article you're talking about. This means nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Not looking good for you, Jean.
I was really excited when I read the abstract. Like, oh, what are we going to talk about? I hope to discover something that was in the article that I couldn't read since all I had access to was the abstract. But no. All I get is article, this article frustrated me. Don't know what's in it. So for the first point on her rubric, 10 points. Does the paper show a clear tie into the assigned article? No. I give her a 0 out of 10.
Guess how much I care on a scale of 1 to 10?
0.
Damn it.
It's not looking good so far, Samantha. Next point on the rubric says, does the paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than a summary? No. I don't even know how she could even get points for this. since I still have no idea what the article is, and those are the 3 references she made to the article that I listed. And while it is not a summary, it's definitely not a summary, it's also not a reaction piece to the article. I would say it's a reaction piece to some sort of gender ideology that she's trying to fight against from her Christian perspective.
They're not even trying to hide it. Children are getting taught about gender and sexual ideology, having it be normalized that if you're a boy but feel like a girl, you can be a girl, and if you're a girl that feels like a boy, then you're a boy. In your own home. From the TV that you probably bought.
But that's not the topic at hand. So she's reacting to something that she's heard about in social media and in the types of things that she consumes, that there's this whole gender ideology being pushed on kids, and she's reacting to that, not the article, because the article is not about that. The article is about mental health in adolescents and how it relates to student popularity and whether they fit the stereotypes of gender norms.
I just wonder if there's anywhere in the world where weirdos like me fit in.
The only part that I can see where she might maybe deserve a point or maybe a half a point is where she says that the article frustrates her because that is a reaction. But still, it's saying, does the paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article? And it's not thoughtful. It's not thoughtful at all. It's just a half-assed reaction. It frustrated me. I mean, my 7-year-old could have written that better. Yeah, so for part 2, 0 out of 10.
0, 0, 0, 0.
If I'm feeling extremely generous, maybe a 0.5. But I mean, let's round down, 0. And part 3, is the paper clearly written? Absolutely not.
Before we get into the disaster that is the essay, I have to be completely fair and point out that the instructions themselves are not well written. I don't know who wrote them, but I think it is worth noticing that when the instructions are riddled with errors, the bar is lowered for student expectations. The first sentence alone is so poorly written. It says, a 650 words paper. That should be 650 word hyphenated. Then you have unparalleled clauses. Reaction paper demonstrating that you read and includes. The verbs are not in the same tense, and it makes the sentence confusing. You then have repetition, which also is a major issue in Samantha's essay as well. We also have a move from passive voice, points will be deducted, to active first person, I will deduct. Here, passive voice would have been fine, especially considering there were multiple professors and teaching assistants for this class. You don't need to specify who. But the change in voice is just jarring and incorrect. We then have misused commas, excessive words, and a misuse of a colon. Why do I bring all this up? If you're going to grade an essay for clarity in writing, you need to be able to write clear instructions. So this explains to me why Samantha would, 1, not think her essay was that bad, and 2, have potentially passed other classes, because the expectations are quite low. But I digress.
All right, I'm going to read through some of this for you just so that you can understand how horrible and awful it was to read and how jumbled it was.
It was torture. Straight torture, son.
So we already read the first sentence of the essay, and I will pull that up. Right off the bat, we have a spelling mistake, and it's not clear. It says, it's very thought-provoking and caused me to thoroughly evaluate. Honestly, that's redundant. You can pick one or the other, because if you're thoroughly evaluating what you think about something, it's understood that it was thought-provoking. You know, it caused you to think about something. It caused you to evaluate. It's just a bunch of words that we don't really need. Concision is always what I say.
You have to be very clear and concise on your instructions.
Let's look at this gem of a sentence. God made male and female. Sounds like we are livestock. And made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. So here we have 2 times made. God made male and made us differently. Super repetitive. And then we have the end of the sentence, on purpose and for a purpose. And while that sounds like, you know, one of the slides that a pastor would put up to go along with his sermon that you'd put in your notes and put like little stars around it. He made us on purpose and for a purpose.
God created you on purpose for a purpose.
It does not belong in an academic essay. It is redundant, unnecessary, and it sounds silly. Like, can you come up with a different word? Can you come up with different phrasing? We should really cut down on how many prepositional phrases we're using. Like, this is not good, guys. And then we have later on in the paragraph, just listen to this. Women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with those womanly desires in our hearts. The same goes for men. Now I'm really confused here. So God created us with those womanly desires. Who is us? Are we all women? Is this everybody in the world, or is this specifically women? Because she's saying us, but who's us? I don't know. What if I didn't know that a woman wrote this? It's just everybody has womanly desires in them? I don't know what she's saying. And then it says the same goes for men. So men have womanly desires too? Is that what you're saying, Samantha? Because that's what it sounds like, because you don't write clearly. But she goes on to say, God created men in the image of his courage and strength, and he created women in the image of his beauty. He intentionally created women differently than men, and we should live our lives with that in mind. Holy repetition. Do you see how many times we have created in those, 3 sentences? We have God created us, God created men, he created women, he intentionally created women. And then we also have live our lives. And so many his, he, God. I mean, do you have a thesaurus, Samantha? Oish. I mean, clearly written. I cannot even give any points for this. This is very unclearly written.
Well, I passed my English test. Look, not so good.
Moving on to some other horrible sentences. It is frustrating to me when I read articles like this and discussion posts from my classmates of so many people trying to conform to the same mundane opinion so they do not step on people's toes. I was very confused reading this because I didn't know what are of so many people trying to conform. Who's trying to conform? Is the article trying to conform? Are the people in the article, the students trying to conform? Are your classmates trying to conform? And what are they trying to conform? What is a mundane opinion? I would say the gender stereotypes are mundane opinions, but it seems to be that she's arguing against it and trying to say that their mundane opinion is this supposed gender ideology that she's arguing against, but that's not a mundane opinion. I'd say that it's relatively new and not mundane. The mundane would be the gender stereotypes. So it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then she has a random comma here. So they do not step on people's toes. Why would they step on people's toes if it's a mundane opinion? If they're trying to conform to the same mundane opinion, they wouldn't be stepping on anybody's toes because it's the mundane opinion that everybody shares. I don't get it. It's an unclear sentence. I don't know what she's talking about. And I mean, since I came from her same background, I get what she's trying to say, but as an editor, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then all throughout here, we have so many passive voices, which, don't they teach this in schools? I taught this. My ESL students know not to use passive voice.
Again, this is something that Samantha should have mastered in 9th grade. Here's the standard in Oklahoma. Use or revise for active, passive voice. Basic stuff.
And I mean, I guess you can have a pass for it if you're writing an academic essay, since there are times when you need to use passive voice. But honestly, this is excessive and I don't think it's needed. Ha! Passive voice there.
Hypocrite!
But let's look. It says tendencies should not be considered stereotypes. Who's considering them stereotypes? We could have put a subject in there. The freedom of speech we have been given by whom? You could just say the freedom of speech that we have. You don't need an excessive been given. It's just, I feel like she's just trying to fit the word count and it just comes off as wordy, unengaging, and boring. And then we have again here, I do not think men and women are pressured to be more masculine or feminine. That might be the only one that I would let go because it's an ambiguous societal pressure that they're talking about. But still, you could rewrite it to say society pressures men and women to make a more active voice. Here again, we have another, in children, if they were raised knowing, you could just change that to grew up. It's not that hard to change passive voice, guys. And here in her conclusion sentence, the lies being spread from Satan. That one's really easy to change. Believe the lies from Satan or Satan's lies. Super easy to remove that. And I feel like she just didn't edit her work. Or do they not teach these things in Oklahoma? Actually, they might not because I've seen the standards from Oklahoma and it's ranked 50th now? Yeah, okay. They might not teach these things. I get it.
Lost Oklahoma.
Still doesn't deserve any points. All right, I have a few more clarity issues just to give you an idea of why I would give it a 0. No points for well-written.
No, you got 0 points for idney.
Let's look at the first sentence in the conclusion. I want you to really hear this. I already mentioned it, but just listen to it. Overall, reading articles such as this one encourage me to one day raise my children knowing that they have a heavenly Father who loves them and cherishes them deeply, and that having their identity firmly rooted in who He is will give them the satisfaction and acceptance that the world can never provide for them. Whew! So, first off, run-on sentence. Massive run-on sentence. What are we even talking about? I don't know. Too much in one sentence. We need to split that up. Second of all, reading articles encourage me. Basic subject-verb agreement. I mean, I can give you a pass for not knowing not to use passive voice considering the state of Oklahoma's education, but subject-verb agreement? You graduated high school without mastering subject-verb agreement? Come on, man.
Are you stupid?
And then here, this whole phrase, raise my children knowing that they have a heavenly father. The phrase with knowing implies that you're going to raise them while you know. You're raising them knowing this, but the rest of it implies that you want your children to know that they have a heavenly father, not that you'll know that they have a heavenly father. It's poorly written. It doesn't make sense what she wants to say. It's not clear at all. And then we just randomly have in here, who he is will give them the satisfaction. We're moving from present tense to the future tense. It's just mumbo jumbo up in here. And then we have the sentence right after that. My prayer for the world, and specifically for American society and youth, is that they would not believe the lies being spread from Satan that make them believe they are better off as another gender than what God made them. Again, it's a tad long and it says a bit too much. And right here, we should be setting off the phrase, and specifically for American society and youth, in commas or em dashes or something, because your focus is, my prayer is for the world, and specifically for society and youth. That should be separated somehow, either by commas or dashes, because the goal is for the world. Is that it? And then you would change they to it because you're talking about the world. There's so many errors in this, and I'm not even reading you the whole thing. We have comma issues, missing commas, wrong word choice, extra words. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. On top of the basic grammar and writing issues, the structure of the essay does not make sense. I still don't really know what her point with this was. I don't see a thesis statement. I don't see a thesis statement in any paragraph either. So we have an introduction that mentions something about an article, and then it jumps to how teasing isn't a problem, and then it jumps to how God created men and women intentionally. And that's the introduction. I don't know where we're going from there. I don't know what the point of this is. It's so confusing. I don't get it. And then the second paragraph, you should have a thesis statement at the beginning of every paragraph so that you know what the paragraph is going to be about. This is basic essay construction, like extremely basic. I don't know. This should be in elementary school, no?
Yep. Yet again, here is the Oklahoma State Standard. This time in second grade. Since second grade, Samantha should have been able to write facts about a topic and include a main idea with supporting details in a paragraph.
Extremely basic. Okay. Paragraph 2, the first sentence we've talked about. It is frustrating when I read articles like this. So I was expecting more of like, why do you feel that way? What in the article made you feel that way? Was this paragraph about that at all? No, it wasn't. This is an extremely long paragraph. I'm shocked. It covers 2 pages. One paragraph covers 2 pages printed.
The longer the better.
And it goes from, it frustrates me that people are trying to conform to something that I can't even explain. And it moves on to, this is a cowardly way to live. So I'm frustrated. You guys are cowards. And it pulls us from God's plan. So then we move on to God, how he made us, the reasons why genders are different. Then we jump to the Bible and what the Bible says in Hebrew. We're getting into Hebrew words, and then what the Hebrew actually means, and then how God describes his Holy Spirit as that same Hebrew word, and then how he made women to be beautiful. And then if it means that I'm falling into the way that God made me, I am following gender stereotypes, and then I'm happy. So if you didn't follow that, what I just said, exactly. That's the second paragraph. I see this as a rant. I see this as a rant against supposed gender ideology. It makes no sense. This paragraph is a complete and utter mess, and it jumps literally all over the place. I was not expecting to see Hebrew in here. Not at all.
What an unfortunate surprise!
And then the third topic sentence, or it's not a topic sentence. The first sentence of the third paragraph just says, I do not think men and women are pressured to be more masculine or feminine. She just completely throws out one of the main questions that the article supposedly addresses and that she should be engaging with. She just throws it out the window. That doesn't exist. And that's her topic sentence. And then she goes on to misrepresent the article, which we talked about, and then using inflammatory language to say that society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders and everyone should be what they want to be is demonic and severely harms American youth. And that goes directly against what the article talks about again. Then she goes on to say, I don't want kids to be teased. However, essentially, yes, they should be teased. And then she goes on to talk about what the Bible says and how she lives her life. And if you're confused yet again and feel like I'm jumping all over the place, it's because that's what reading the article feels like. It's just an utter mess. And we already talked about the conclusion, but she has massively long paragraphs, and then the conclusion is all of 3 sentences, and it doesn't really make sense either. It essentially says that overall reading articles like this make me more secure in my beliefs and how I will raise my kids, and that lies are being spread by Satan. And it ends with a prayer. I pray that they feel God's love and acceptance as who he originally created them to be. Is there another time when he created them? It's, again, redundant, repetitive, unnecessary words. So overall, it's a mess. Grammatically, a mess. Organizationally, a mess. It is a complete and utter mess.
I mean, that thing is unreadable.
And I really would like to know how she graduated and got into university with such poor writing skills. Because I remember I had to write so many essays and they all had to be structured way better than this. And with that in mind, after I read this essay, I thought, okay, well, this reads like a freshman in college. Maybe that she didn't do well in high school and this is one of her first classes where she has to write an essay. And this is really her introduction to academic writing, structured writing. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. She's a freshman and she's just taking an elective about gender studies. That's what I thought this essay was for. But no, she is a junior in college. She is a junior in college. And you know what she is majoring in? Psychology.
You gotta be kidding me.
She is about to graduate in about a year and she cannot write a well-structured academic essay. And on top of that, she is majoring in psychology and she is writing shit like this about peer-reviewed psychology articles where she is unable to separate her beliefs and her worldview from actual data. This is extremely concerning on so many levels. And when I found that out, I was utterly flabbergasted. And I mean, I'm not a fan of the education system in the States at all, but this just made me so much more concerned that this is the work of a junior in college and one who is going to become a licensed psychologist.
Potentially.
And potentially work with kids. And she is writing this, which essentially says that she encourages bullying and rejects scientific evidence that says that bullying is harmful. This is utterly mind-boggling to me. And for that reason, and for the reason that we just talked about, that she didn't even meet any of the requirements on the rubric, she deserves a 0.
You brought this on yourself, son.
And I would hope that she gets lower grades in other classes as well, because this is extremely concerning for someone at her grade level and someone in her major. So let's look at specific examples from her essay that raise red flags for me in regards to her major being psychology. First off, her arguments within the essay contradict the article and dismiss it. She's writing inflammatory arguments, dismissing actual evidence. She does not address any of the things talked about in the article, such as social rejection, peer-enforced gender policing, mental health outcomes, gender atypical behavior, social rejection, or even statistical findings. And instead of actually dealing with that, she completely dismisses it and then says things like, I do not necessarily see this as a problem, in referencing to using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. She is supporting bullying when she has an article with the statistics saying how harmful it is. She later goes on to kind of contradict herself and say, I do not want kids to be teased or bullied in school. Another use of passive voice there. However, pushing the lie that everyone has their own truth and everyone can do whatever they want and be whoever they want is not biblical whatsoever. Again, wordy sentence. I mean, none of this is good. But the point is that she says, I don't want kids to be teased or bullied unless it goes against my biblical worldview, and then teasing and bullying is okay.
The rules are rules unless they apply to you.
She's outright rejecting the whole field of gender psychology. She's rejecting statistical findings. This is ludicrous to me. And considering she's in her 3rd year of college, she has to have had prior psychological studies. Has she not interacted with any studies on bullying and how detrimental it is to children? Has she not had any studies on mental health? This cannot be her first time reading something about bullying, mental health, social rejection, mediation efforts. This cannot be the first time. She has to understand that what she's saying here is so harmful. And there are ways to engage with the findings and still maintain your religious beliefs and your worldview. You don't have to reject them to engage with statistics. I can look at statistics, I can see how bullying is harmful to them, and I can still maintain my personal beliefs. Those can be 2 separate things. And instead of viewing it like that and actually engaging with evidence, she completely throws evidence out the window and puts her religious belief in there.
Why do you follow people's directions when you could literally pick them up and throw them out the window?
And not only does she implant her religious belief, but she assumes that her religious beliefs are the same for everyone else. And that is also extremely harmful. And as someone studying psychology, she should be able to recognize that, oh, hey, my beliefs aren't everyone's beliefs. So she says things like, women naturally want womanly things. Men are created in the image of God's strength, and women are created in God's beauty. I don't always relate to that. I don't like doing a lot of womanly things. I don't fit the gender norm in that sense, and I still identify as a cis woman. That's okay, and that's part of this discussion. She cannot step outside of her worldview to consider others, and that is extremely concerning for somebody studying psychology. And I know very little about psychology, and I can recognize, oh, that is a major red flag. Like, I don't even know much about this stuff, but I can see that this person should not be a psychologist, especially when she's substituting her religious beliefs for actual evidence. And if she disagreed with the premise of the article, I think that could be a valid discussion. But why do you disagree with it? Let's bring in statistics from somewhere else. Let's bring in actual evidence. Let's bring in cross-cultural data. Let's bring in history, other studies. You can say, I disagree with the premise of this. I do not think this data is relevant. I don't think this data is accurate. I think that there are some pieces missing. I think we should consider other factors. Those are valid critiques. Take them, bring in outside evidence, other studies, and we have a discussion. But when you just base things off your personal convictions and what you think and believe that others should also think and believe, that's not an academic essay.
And this is exactly what her instructors had to say as well. I'm going to read you the direct response from Mel Kurth and the other instructor, Megan Waldron, so you can see the reasoning behind the grade. I thought they were both kind, fair, and understandably firm. They seem to echo my same concerns and expectations. Mel wrote, "Please note that I am not deducting points because you have certain beliefs, but instead I am deducting points for you posting a reaction paper that does not answer the questions for this assignment, contradicts itself, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class, and is at times offensive. While you are entitled to your own personal beliefs, there is an appropriate time or place to implement them in your reflections. I encourage all students to question or challenge the course material with other empirical findings or testable hypotheses, but using your own personal beliefs to argue against the findings of not only this article, but the findings of countless articles across psychology, biology, sociology, etc., is not best practice. You argue that abiding by normative gender roles is beneficial. It is perfectly fine to believe this, but not then say that everyone should act the same while also saying that people aren't pressured into gendered expectations is contradictory, especially since your arguments reflect a religious pressure to act in gender stereotypical ways. You can say that strict gender norms don't create gender stereotypes, but that isn't true by definition of what a stereotype is. Please note that acknowledging gender stereotypes does not immediately denote a negative connotation, a nuance this article discusses. Additionally, to call an entire group of people demonic is highly offensive, especially a minoritized population. You are entitled to your own beliefs, but this isn't a vague narrative of society pushes lies, but instead the result of countless years developing psychological and scientific evidence for these claims and directly interacting with the communities involved. You may personally disagree with this, but that doesn't change the fact that every major psychological, medical, pediatric, and psychiatric association in the United States acknowledges that biologically and psychologically, sex and gender is neither binary nor fixed. I implore you apply some more perspective and empathy in your work. If you personally disagree with the findings, then by all means share your criticisms, but make sure to do so in a way that is appropriate and using the methodology of empirical psychology as aligned with the learning goals in this class. If you have any additional questions or concerns about this or would like some additional educational resources, I would be happy to discuss this further and provide you with them. And then Megan says, Samantha, I am the other instructor for this course, and I have also taken the time to read your paper. I concur with Mel on the grade you received. This paper should not be considered as a completion of the assignment. Everyone has different ways in which they see the world, but in an academic course such as this, you are being asked to support your ideas with empirical evidence and higher level reasoning. I find it concerning that you state at the beginning of your paper that you do not think bullying, teasing, is a bad thing. In addition, your paper directly and harshly criticizes your peers and their opinions, which are just as valuable as yours. Disagreeing with others is fine, but there's a respectful way to go about it. That goes for discussion posts as well as reaction papers. Please employ more thoughtfulness in your future assignments.
This is honestly a rant article about the alleged gender ideology that she believes is being forced on kids' throats.
What stuff? This gay nonsense they're teaching.
All right, guys, final verdict. She deserved that 0, and honestly, I think that her professors and academic counselors should be taking another look at her courses and her work from now on, because if this is the type of rhetoric, especially inflammatory rhetoric, like demonic and lies from Satan and cowardly are being used when discussing things like childhood bullying and supporting it, that's a major red flag for this student. And I would suggest that she change majors at the very least. And I would also suggest that the professor that was put on leave be reinstated.
I'm sorry, I've been referring to her as the professor for this whole video, mostly because that was how the media has painted her, the trans professor. Her name is Mel Kurth, and she is, or was, actually a teaching assistant. Right as I was about to publish this video, Oklahoma University announced that she was fired. So Mel will not be reinstated as I had hoped, but perhaps that is for the best, as this university clearly doesn't have her back. This is the announcement they gave, clearly showing her transition from a man to a woman, which I find utterly disrespectful and degrading. On top of that, it includes lies about her saying she religiously discriminated against Samantha, which we have seen that she did not.
Now, there have been protests and rallies and everything trying to get the professor reinstated, which I absolutely support. I do not think the professor did anything wrong. This is clearly not a violation of First Amendment rights on the student's behalf. I do feel that this is a targeted attack at her professor because her professor is trans. This is the type of thing that I, as a Christian, would have done. I said, the Spirit's moving me. I need to speak this because this is truth and the professor needs to hear it. She is living a lie and this is not okay. She needs to hear the truth and she needs to hear God's truth. And I would have written, I never wrote like that, but I would have written a better essay talking about the same things and trying to push the Christian worldview. And she went specifically to Turning Point USA because who was the founder? Charlie Kirk. And what did Charlie Kirk speak out against? Trans people.
You're lying to yourself and lying to other people that you could become something other than what you are born.
And she knew that she would get the support that she needed from them. She knew that if she wrote an essay like this and she got a 0, she could go directly to them and they would fight her battle for her. This is not a case of Christian persecution, but yet another case of persecution against the LGBTQ plus community. Cannot convince me otherwise that this was not planned. I 100% believe that.
And by planned, I don't necessarily mean against Mel specifically. I do understand that it was an online class and Samantha had not actually met the TA. However, I do mean that it was planned against the LGBTQ plus community in general. If you don't believe me, just look at this post from the Oklahoma University Turning Point USA. It says, that feeling when you get when there's one less she, they on campus. And it has a guy happily dancing. And then they also posted a Trump meme that says, you're fired, to celebrate when Mel was let go. The Turning Point chapter at the university is quite literally celebrating the discrimination against the LGBTQ plus community while claiming they themselves are the victim.
And then this also plays into the whole rhetoric of Christian martyrdom and Christian persecution. And again, yes, Christian martyrs do exist. Yes, Christians are persecuted, but not in the United States. This is not a thing in the United States. And we can see this because Samantha is now getting a hero type treatment. She was invited to speak in front of groups. Her face is being plastered everywhere by Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA has taken her case and is now fighting the Christian fight with her. She is becoming a hero for writing this essay. And who becomes the villain? Her trans professor. And they are painting her trans professor as the evil one, as they always do, because this isn't about Christian persecution. It's about making Christianity the world religion and pushing down everyone who disagrees. So guys, this video has been a bit of a rant video, just like Samantha's essay was a bit of a rant essay. But I want to be very clear. Samantha deserves a 0, and I would have given her a 0 and talked to her academic counselor, advisor, whatever she has after seeing something like this. I would have taken her name to a superior and say, I don't think this person should be studying psychology. This is very concerning to me, to protect her future clients. So I would have given her 0 and much more. But I would love to hear what you guys think. So please leave your thoughts and comments down below, especially anyone who knows more about psychology than I do. It is definitely not my area of expertise. So I'd love to hear someone weigh in who actually knows something about the field. And please make sure to like and subscribe. I have so many more videos in the works. I am also planning some content in Espanol. So please stay tuned for a potential new channel release. But until then, question everything.